Ethan Hale never imagined that curiosity could become a trap. When he first accepted the invitation to the old Prescott mansion on the outskirts of town, he thought it was nothing more than an eccentric charity event. The handwritten card had promised a night of elegance, refinement, and opportunity. But the moment he stepped into the candlelit hall, he realized he was no longer a guest, he was being studied. Two women flanked him. One, Miss Langford, tall and severe in a midnight blue coat, carried herself like a judge. Her sharp eyes flicked across Ethan's posture, his nervous hands, even the way he shifted his weight. The other, Miss Clara, softer in voice and dress, carried a measuring tape and a smile that seemed too practiced. They led him to a mirror that towered against the wall, its gold frame etched with strange symbols. A crimson gown had been laid out beside it. "Change," Miss Langford commanded. Ethan hesitated, his throat dry. I don't understand. I thought this was a gala." Miss Clara's smile widened as she held out the gown. "It is. But every gala has its performers. Tonight, you're ours." Minutes later, Ethan stood in front of the mirror, unrecognizable. The dress clung to him, reshaping his outline. Black stockings pinched at his thighs, and the polished heels forced him to balance delicately. Clara adjusted a honey-blonde wig on his head, her hands lingering just long enough to unsettle him. Ethan barely recognized the painted face staring back, lips softened by gloss, lashes long and fluttering. He felt his pulse race as Miss Langford circled him like a sculptor judging a statue. "Limit his stride further," she instructed. "Make sure he sways. They'll expect it." Clara bent down, hemming the gown closer to his ankles, restricting his steps. "You'll be perfect," she whispered. "Perfect for what?" Ethan asked, his voice cracking. Miss Langford's eyes narrowed. "For the circle. For the role you were chosen to play." The following days blurred into a strange, enforced routine. Ethan wasn't allowed to use his real name anymore. Clara began calling him Elena, a name that felt foreign at first, but echoed through the mansion until it clung to him like perfume. Every morning, they dressed him in silks, lace, and pastels. Every afternoon, they drilled him how to walk with short, swaying steps, how to tilt his chin modestly, how to smile without showing too much teeth. At night, Clara whispered encouragements, while Langford reminded him of the expectations. Slowly, disturbingly, Ethan noticed himself slipping. Each time the mirror showed him Elena, the image seemed less like a disguise and more like a version of himself he could no longer deny. On the 7th evening, as Clara fastened a pearl necklace around his throat, Miss Langford stood behind him with a faint smile. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "you'll be presented to the circle. The Grand Regent will decide if you are worthy." Ethan's breath caught. He didn't know who this regent was or why he had been chosen. But as he stared into the mirror at Elena's face, a terrifying truth sank in. Part of him wasn't sure he wanted to go back. Presented to the circle, the night everything changed. The mansion was different that night. Every chandelier was lit, every hallway perfumed with roses, and yet the air felt colder. Ethan, though no one used that name anymore, was guided down the grand staircase by Clara, her arm looped through his as if they were attending a ball. But it wasn't a ball. It was an initiation. At the bottom of the staircase, a pair of heavy oak doors stood open. Inside waited a long table surrounded by men and women in velvet masks. Their masks shimmered with gold filigree, but their eyes, sharp, appraising, reminded Elena of hawks watching prey. The Grand Regent sat at the far end. He wore no mask, only a silver chain across his chest and an expression that was unreadable. Clara leaned close, whispering into Elena's ear, "Breathe. Bow when he looks at you. Smile, but not too much. They like poise, not desperation." Elena's knees nearly buckled as the regent rose. His voice was smooth, but laced with authority. "So this is the one." He circled her slowly, hands clasped behind his back. Every detail of her gown, her heels, her trembling hands, he took in with the cold precision of a collector. "Tell me," he said finally, his voice echoing in the chamber, "who are you?" Elena's lips parted, but the answer that came wasn't hers. It was the one Clara and Langford had drilled into her. "I am Elena Hale," she whispered, lowering her eyes. "I am here to serve the circle with grace and obedience." A ripple of approval passed through the masked figures. Clara squeezed her hand gently, but the regent didn't smile. Instead, he leaned close, his breath brushing her ear. "And what if your old self returns? What if Ethan tries to claw his way back?" The name, Ethan, struck like thunder. She hadn't heard it spoken aloud in days, maybe weeks. Her stomach twisted, but before she could answer, Miss Langford stepped forward. "He won't," she said firmly. "We've seen to it." The regent's gaze lingered on Elena's trembling face. Then, for the first time, his lips curved upward. "Very well. Tomorrow night, she will prove herself. Publicly." Elena barely slept. In the guest chamber, she paced back and forth, the hem of her gown whispering across the carpet. Clara entered quietly, carrying a silver tray with tea and biscuits. "You should rest," Clara murmured. "Tomorrow will be important." "What do they want from me?" Elena's voice cracked. "Why me? Why this?" Clara placed the tray down, her expression softening. For once, she didn't smile. "Because, Elena, you weren't chosen at random. You've been watched. Studied. They believe you can embody something most can't, the perfect illusion. And once you step onto that stage tomorrow, there will be no turning back." Elena's heart thundered. Not just because of the words, but because deep inside, part of her wanted to see what tomorrow looked like. The next evening, the ballroom was filled with strangers, nobles, politicians, artists, all cloaked in mystery. A small platform stood at the center, lit by golden lamps. And on that platform, Elena would stand. Miss Langford fastened her corset tighter than ever, making each breath shallow. Clara applied a final touch of crimson lipstick and whispered, "Smile, darling. The world is about to meet you." The regent raised his glass. "Ladies and gentlemen of the circle, tonight, you will witness a rebirth." All eyes turned toward the platform. Elena's pulse pounded in her ears as the crowd began to applaud, the sound swelling, almost deafening. Her life as Ethan was gone. Her life as Elena had just begun. But as she took the first step toward the stage, she caught a glimpse of someone in the crowd, a man without a mask, staring at her with recognition in his eyes. And in that instant, terror gripped her chest. Someone in this room knew who she really was. The platform felt like a trap disguised as a stage. Elena's heels clicked against the polished wood as she stepped into the circle of golden light. Dozens of masked faces stared, silent and expectant. The applause faded into an almost unbearable hush, leaving only the sound of her shallow breathing. Miss Langford stood near the regent, her eyes sharp with command. Clara gave a subtle nod of encouragement from the side, her lips shaping the word smile. So Elena smiled. She lifted her chin, lowered her gaze just enough to seem modest, and curtsied gracefully, just as they had drilled her. The regent's voice rang out. "Tonight, you see the perfection of transformation. The old self is gone. What remains is Elena." The crowd applauded, but Elena's eyes darted toward the back. That man again. No mask. No applause. Just his piercing gaze cutting through the illusion. Her stomach twisted. Did he know? Did he see Ethan beneath the powder and pearls? The regent gestured, and a masked woman stepped forward carrying a silver chalice. Elena was instructed to kneel. The chalice trembled in her hands as the woman whispered, "Drink and seal your vow." The liquid was sweet and heavy, coating her throat. Applause thundered once more. Clara's eyes glistened with pride. Miss Langford gave the faintest of nods. But Elena barely heard them. She could feel the man's stare drilling into her back. After the ceremony, the ballroom shifted into music and laughter. Guests mingled, glasses clinking, gowns sweeping across the floor. Elena was guided from group to group, praised for her grace, admired for her rebirth. Yet her mind wasn't on the circle's approval. It was on him. Eventually, she slipped away from the regent's orbit and found herself in a dim corridor lined with portraits. And there he was, waiting. "You don't belong here," he said softly. Elena froze. His voice was low, urgent, and all too familiar. Her lips parted. Who are you? The man's eyes softened. You don't remember me, do you? We worked together. Before all this. Her breath hitched. Ethan's life, his job, his friends, it all felt distant, smothered by lace and lipstick. But something about this man's voice tugged at memories she thought were gone. You need to leave this place, he whispered. They aren't saving you. They're rewriting you. Before Elena could respond, Clara appeared at the far end of the corridor. Her voice was gentle, but her eyes blazed. Elena, darling, you shouldn't wander off. Come back. The regent is asking for you. The man stiffened. Don't trust them, he hissed, then melted back into the shadows before Clara reached them. Clara slipped an arm around Elena's waist as though nothing had happened, guiding her back toward the ballroom. But Elena's pulse raced, her thoughts torn apart. Was the man telling the truth? Had she really been rewritten, or had she chosen this new self more than she dared admit? As the music swelled, Elena realized something terrifying. For the first time since her transformation began, she wasn't sure whose side she was on. The music of the ballroom swirled around Elena like smoke, but she barely heard it. Clara's grip on her waist was light, almost protective, yet it felt more like a leash than an embrace. Elena, Clara whispered sweetly, the regent wants to speak with you privately. Her stomach nodded. The regent. The man who had spoken her old name as if he owned it. They slipped through a hidden door behind the ballroom, entering a chamber draped in velvet curtains. A single chair sat in the center, more like a throne than a seat. The regent leaned against it casually, a glass of wine in his hand. You did well tonight, he said. Graceful. Obedient. Convincing. Elena forced a curtsy. Thank you, sir. But the regent's smile faded as he stepped closer, his eyes drilling into her. Still, I wonder. Is Ethan gone? Her throat tightened. I don't know him anymore. Good. His voice dropped, low and sharp. Because if you falter, if the mask slips, the circle will not forgive you.